which found that Teva wasn't able to cancel the claims. The patent office kind of uses a double negative that they said it's not unpatentable. They'd like to make it confusing for regular people. The patent covers Corlum, I think I'm saying it right, which is Cort's essentially the main revenue driver. There's district court case in New Jersey that is currently done being briefed for summary judgment involving this patent, which would essentially stop Teva from their ANDA filing and to sell a generic version. It looks like the patents that cover this was previously settled in another case, and the settlement runs through about 2034. So if the patent office upholds if the Federal Circuit upholds the patent office finding, it kind of puts a feather in Cort's cap, and probably is very helpful if there's any acquisition talks. They know that at least one of the patents is pretty bulletproof. That's pretty much it for the introduction.
Great. Gaston with Markman Advisors, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, hey David, hey Dan. Yeah, I thought this was pretty much went as well as it probably could have for Corcept here. Having been involved in these Federal Circuit arguments and listened to a lot of them, I'm always very curious to see how hot the bench is right off the bat. And here it looked like Judge Moore, kind of let the lawyer for Teva, make his initial point, but then she jumped in right after him. And a couple of words that I thought were really confrontational in a good way that she used when she was addressing him was, collapse. You're asking us to make new rules or new law. And what she was trying to get at, I think, is this idea that, in Teva's view of the world here, all you have to do is show that there's it's obvious to try. And what Judge Moore seems interested in is making sure that the lines around that it's not just obvious to try, right? You actually have to have it obvious to try, and there has to be a reasonable expectation of success. And I would never want to be the lawyer confronting a judge saying who's trying to get me to admit that I'm trying to change the law, right? We want the judges to be comfortable with our arguments. So I thought that right off the bat, that was very interesting. The other point I would make, and this goes to when Corcept's lawyer was arguing, was it wasn't really much of an argument. To me, it was more of a philosophical discussion around the possible parameters of some clarification of the obviousness doctrine. And that's something that we typically see with the Federal Circuit when there just really isn't a lot of sympathy for the other side's argument. And, the judges use the time to probe, the philosophical underpinnings of the issue with the winning lawyer. So, if you had to ask me for my vote, I actually think this went as well for Corcept as it could have.
Yeah, I think we're going to see it similarly. So just to frame people, follow up on both of what you just said. So there's an underlying district court case against Corcept, and in that case, Corcept has asserted 2 patents, and one of them was challenged. So Corcept doesn't need to win on both in order to keep Teva off the market. Corcept only needs to win on one claim of one patent. So Teva decided to challenge one of the patents through this post-grant patent office process. They lost at the patent office. On the day of that decision, Corcept stock went up 25% or so. And now Teva is trying to get the patent office's decision reversed on appeal. They've got an uphill battle just without even getting into the substance. Roughly 75 to 80% of the time, the Court of Appeals affirms patent office decisions. Another roughly 15% of the time, they reverse, and about 10% of the time, there's some kind of mixed decision. That's not applicable here because there's only one discrete issue on appeal. Mixed decisions are usually when there's multiple issues. So the odds are heavily in Corcept's favor even before we listen to the oral argument. And the panel, the three judges of the appeals court that heard the case today were Moore, Newman, and Raina. Newman is one of the most senior, or the most senior judge on the court. She's been there for decades. She has a chemistry background. She is generally very appreciative of the effort of pharmaceutical innovation, I'll put it that way. It would very much surprise me to see Judge Newman rule in a way that would overturn the patent office's decision that this is a valid pharmaceutical patent. So I think Newman's vote is in Corcept's court regardless. Then it comes down to Moore and Raina, and Moore's questioning, she was by far the most active judge asking questions. And while she did grill both sides somewhat, she really went after Teva's lawyer right at the heart of his case because she's concerned. Some people try to say, well, this patent is obvious, this patent is invalid because it's obvious because it was obvious to try. And that's not the law. That's exactly what Gaston was just explaining. It's not obvious because it was obvious to try. It's only obvious if it was obvious to try and there was a reasonable expectation of success. So she really pushed back on him, and it's very, very difficult to get the Court of Appeals to reverse the patent office. So there's two ways in which the Court of Appeals can affirm. They can write an opinion explaining why they're affirming. That process can take 2 to 4 months or even longer. Or they can just rubber stamp and just say, we affirm, without writing an opinion at all. That's what we call a Rule 36. And more than half the time when they affirm, they do the rubber stamp Rule 36. So what were your thinkings? Did either of you have thoughts about the outcome here and how it may happen in timing or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'll go before Gaston. Obviously I'm not a patent lawyer, that's why it's great to speak with you guys, but this, I've listened to hundreds of these hearings. This has been an easy Rule 36 in favor of court within the next 5 business days. This is pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, and I'll say that, if I had to put some probabilities around this, I think this has a good chance of being a Rule 36 affirmance. The one caveat I could see is if Judge Moore is inclined to, clarify some of the issues and make clear that, you can't just say obvious to try without really, articulating that there would be a reasonable expectation of success and carrying your burden on that question as well. If she thinks that this case is a good vehicle for that, we could see her potentially do it. But in terms of timing, if it's going to be a Rule 36, like David said, we usually see it in a week to 2 at the outset. Sometimes as soon as the end of this week could even be in play, I think, for something like this. And then because I agree with you, Dan, that the chances of a dissent in this case, I just didn't see anything in this argument that suggests that any of the judges cared enough to part ways from each other. I think to the extent there is going to be opinion, it'll probably be if not Rule 36, relatively quickly. Just one more point on the actual mechanics of the argument, and one of the things I always listen for, and I'm sure you do as well, Dan and Dave, is if the court is not happy with what the board has done in a particular case, I find that most of the panels have no problem going right to the point that they think is problematic, right? Whether it's a claim construction ruling, whether it's some element of the obviousness analysis, there's usually a lot of focus on here's the particular mistake that the board made, and here's why the case should be reversed. I just didn't hear that today. What I heard was more of a academic exercise, and we agree with the result. Let's think about whether or not this case could be a vehicle for a broader, policy statement about obviousness law.
I think that's very well said.
Yep, I got nothing to add to that, my friend. Any other questions either of you had or wanted to share with the folks? We want to thank everyone for joining our spaces. We're going to do another one on Thursday in the Moderna versus Arbutus appeal. So make sure to follow each of us, IP Hawk, G Crub, and Markman Advisors. Anything else from the two of you before we sign off?
There's Apple versus Wyland on Friday as well.
Right. Perfect.
You know, these well received. We should do Apple versus Wyland. It's a big case. I think a $93 million verdict or decision. So it's the second time it's, I believe, back at the federal circuit.
Yeah, and that's Friday. So Thursday is Moderna Arbitrus. Friday is Apple Wyland. Got it.
All right, well, thanks. Always great to talk to you guys. Always great to get a little patent, federal circuit action in before lunch. So hope everybody has a great day, and thanks to everybody listening.
All right, take care.
Yep.